Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up with Matt Salthouse, CEO of Kainantu Resources this morning. They are chasing gold and maybe copper in Papua New Guinea. We talked to them about the resources that they've put in place on the ground, important to manage your ESG there, as our viewers will know. We also look at their money situation and any potential M&A activity in the near future. If you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation or indeed the company itself and Matt, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club, where you can also find detailed company reports and analysis. We've got commentary from experts from around the world on a variety of companies and commodities. We've got training courses on there. We've also done summaries of all the interviews that we've done to save you some time because we know you're busy people. And if you want to join a thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, safe, friendly environment, free from all that judgment, trolling and abuse you see everywhere else, you can join them at cruxinvestor.com/club. I hope you think that sounds nice, because it is. And we'd love your feedback too. So give us a like, leave your comments below. And if you want to see precisely what we talked about with Matt today, do take a look in the description below. Matt, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm really good. The two Matts. Sounds like a really bad 1970s comedy show. Where are you?
I'm based in Singapore.
Right.
So been living in Singapore for 9 years. Initially came up here with Archipelago Resources, London-listed AIM gold producer, and have stayed on and worked in a variety of executive roles in the natural resources space since then. And started with the listing of Kainantu in late last year as CEO of this company, which has been great fun so far. My interest always was to move from more executive into building and developing a small company, taking that forward in the natural resources space, in the gold mining space, and Kainantu's given us an opportunity to fulfil that ambition, as well as creating a platform for future value creation for our shareholders and investors.
Good man. Hey, so tell me, what's going on in Singapore? I get the kind of COVID restrictions, but I'm thinking about more the finance side of things, because it's a nice exchange. Is money easy to come by up there? Is that why you've stayed?
Money's pretty easy to come by, although in natural resources space we tend to see putting oil and gas to one side, mining, there is investment. It tends to get invested into the ASX or Canadian markets, as opposed directly into the stock exchange here. But there is an interest, I think, from the EDB, which is the Economic Development Board of Singapore, to develop a mining culture in Singapore. Obviously, a lot of the majors, BHP and Rio and what have you, have had commercial geology centres here at the big end of town for a number of years. There's an interest in building a smaller franchise, if you will, as a hub for other companies looking to enter the region through Singapore, which is one of the reasons why we originally set up Archipelago's head office here in Singapore a number of years ago, and why I've stayed here.
Okay, and so Hong Kong Exchange versus Singapore Exchange, which is the one that you think has got the most potential?
Yeah, look, it's a. I've got to say Singapore, obviously.
Yeah, well, but even honestly,
Singapore is home.
True.
Hong Kong is a big market, and companies have got to go there. They've got to be big in scale, and obviously have a connection to China or some such angle, if you will. Singapore, a little more agnostic there. Open to innovation. There's a lot of investment here into innovation and biotech and IT and what have you, as well as an aside from mining. But I think the Singaporeans have kept their independence in terms of regional autonomy. At the same time as they've managed to build good relations across the region, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's maintained itself as a successful hub during this COVID period.
It's interesting. We saw a lot of wealth creation with Hong Kong about 10 years ago, and then a lot of that value destroyed very, very quickly. And I wanted the lessons learned by Singapore there in terms of how they go about encouraging investment into Singapore exchange and listings and so forth. Are you seeing many of the Aussies coming up there?
Look, there's been a few. I think I've got to say in the mining space, it's still a cottage industry, if you will, and certainly is a place to list. Haven't been too many listings. As I say, it tends to be more a place where you can develop quite a successful business as a hub for regional expansion, which is one of the reasons why Kainantu's still here and has set itself up here, and why Archipelago came here. So I think it's a great place to do business with a regional perspective, not necessarily from an investment angle, more of a business angle, and create opportunities to do things in and out of region from Singapore as a hub.
Okay, well, we better start talking about you. I'm just intrigued by what's going on out there, the financial centres there.
Yeah, no, they've done very well with whole of COVID and everything. It's been good.
Brilliant. Well, let's talk about Kainantu, which is Papua New Guinea. You're hunting for gold. You've identified some targets there, and we'll talk about those in a second. But with new stories, I'm always intrigued as to how the management team go about setting themselves up for success. So can we, relatively recent listing, can we talk about the plan? What did you want to try and do day one? Is this just a case of the market's hot, let's go and do anything? Or was it more to it? How did you set it up? What are you setting out to try and achieve?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So look, I think 2018, myself and some other executives I've worked with at Oceania Gold Corporation, Archipelago Resources in region, I think we saw an opportunity to build a niche small mining, junior mining company in Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia. I don't think there's too many listed companies, certainly in the Canadian exchange, at the junior level in Southeast Asia. So we kind of saw a niche there. I think, having worked a lot in this part of the world, it occurred to us that to be successful, we'd need to have a strong local partner, a good asset, something that was in proximity to existing successful operations in the mining space, and taking our niche, probably working and resolving social license issues. So we think we'd be quite good at neutralising sovereign risk in developing countries. So that was our mantra, if you will, 2018. We settled on Papua New Guinea around this time in association with our business partners here in Singapore, Asia Pacific Energy Ventures. And we identified some targets in Papua New Guinea, obviously highly prospective part of the world, but has had a checkered past for some miners. The intention was to, as I say, look for high quality assets in close proximity to other producers, where there'd probably been a social license issue, legacy issue in the past to resolve, and obviously a quality project. So assembling a good team with a local partner, we did that. We honed in on Kainantu region, which is obviously one of the world-renowned premier regions in Papua New Guinea for gold exploration, and we banked our tenements, which we have here now, which is the core of our portfolio. The intention really, as I say, take that concept, quality asset in proximity to good miner, where we could resolve social license issues, neutralise sovereign risk, take that as a concept, create a company around that, which we've done, and then list that company and give that company access to capital markets and provide that as a platform for growth and future expansion in region with Asia Pacific as niche. So that's where we've come to now. So I think I'd like to think we've been successful in identifying a concept, building that into a company, now listing that company, and now we're in the process of building a company around that listing and looking at ways to make ourselves an investment of choice, if you will, in a fairly competitive market.
Right. So how do you go about doing this? I'm intrigued in the building of companies. I think there's some real clues when you look at the way that companies set about doing it. So let's talk about this corporate structure. It's a relatively new company. You've got a shell. You've found some assets. You've put those in together. So what's that construct look like? Who owns what? How much money's gone into it, and where's that money come from?
Yeah. So the shell effectively was a CPC transaction Canadian market. So we devolved or demerged Kainantu Resources, which is a gold asset, out of APEV Group or Asia Pacific Energy Ventures early last year. I came in to effectively build this as a commercial asset and bring in some of the people I've worked with, our CFO, our principal geologist, and some other guys involved in the background, our chairman, Marcus Engelbrecht, to create a structured management around this asset and take it into build on our local geology team that's already in country, and then list that as a company in its own right. And we've raised, I think, 4.1 million Canadian on the listing. Obviously, it's a relatively smooth, streamlined little company at the moment, with the tenements, good quality assets in it. And the list in Canada, I think about 65 to 70% of that is the original founding investors, if you will, that came through on the demerger, and the rest are new stakeholders who entered the company on listing and decided to get involved with the story, and we're grateful for their support as well.
Okay, so how much have you, like for instance, Marcus and yourself put into this thing?
Yeah, so I think my holdings about 7-8% at the moment. Invested a material sum of money. So I think all of the original APEV stakeholders and myself invested in excess of $1 million in total into the raising. So it was one of the aspects of the listing last year that we did follow our money. We followed it, with a sizable check, if you will, into the story. We believe the story. We believe in Papua New Guinea as a place to do business. We've been embarking on this strategy for some years, and opportunities presented itself with appreciating gold price to get this company away and now do something with it. Yeah.
So tell me, I just need to understand how important this is to you. How many other gigs have you got going on at the moment? Is this your focus, or are you sort of juggling or spinning plates?
For me, this is my primary focus. So really, this is 100% of my time, and that's I must say 7 days a week at the moment. I think whether you're an executive at Oceana Gold, you're me running this little startup company, the activities and the issues that you face each day are the same, and require the same focus and effort if you're to discharge the role effectively. And that's my intention.
Brilliant. So how do you control things like when you use a sort of CPC structure? You've got lots of different people, lots of different interests, and sometimes that causes overhangs. Sometimes people have got other things that they need the money for, and they can put you in a precarious position. So how have you kind of gathered everyone under the same roof and said, right, guys, we've got to give this thing time to breathe. We need this story to be able to run for at least 12 months with the capital we've got, to actually move things for us, to develop things like we want. I mean, are in terms of hold periods, in terms of contracts or agreements, I mean, how do you manage and control that?
It's a good observation, because obviously building a company with early stage but blue chip exploration assets, they require some time and patience to get off the ground. I think we're very fortunate that we have very strong founding investors who are backing the story, continue to back the story, and will back the story. There is a warrant structure attaching to this if shares trade above 40 cents Canadian, I think, and the intention is from all of the founding guys going in that we would take those warrants and reinvest into the story. So the intention is to continue to build incrementally there. I think I've got strong support from that group to continue to work with us. And I think the network that we built in Vancouver, so initially reaching back to some of the contacts I had in Oceana days, it was very helpful in that the investors who took part in the subscription last year are all long holders. They understand that this is an early stage asset in a premier jurisdiction near K92, and they're in for the long run. So that has to be the focus. I think we have to continue to build momentum and build the story and take people on the journey. We'll continue. We've obviously pushed out a bit of news flow in the last month or two, and we'll continue to do that process. So I think people can look back and look at the end of the year, look at a series of press releases which said this is what we're going to do, and they can see us implementing that step by step along the path. And I think that level of transparency should, well, the intention is that maintains buy-in and support for the stock and patience as we work hard on the ground there.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking at your chart, obviously you kind of buck the trend in the sense that a lot of gold companies have come off. They've really come off because there's a huge dependency on the gold price being, a lot, a bit higher than it is today. But you're only 4 months into this thing. You haven't had time to do much. So we'll talk about the journey bit in a second. So let's focus in on these tenements that you picked up. They're next door to K92's project, which obviously, $1 billion plus company. Tell me the thinking behind that. Why go there?
Yeah, so look, blue chip assets, blue chip jurisdiction, world-renowned Kainantu transfer structure, and I think we honed into that area, and we looked at some other areas in Papua New Guinea, which were also on trend of very successful mining operations, but we were not encouraged by some of the social license aspects with those projects. We took a view that with these aspects, through our network and relations in country, we'd be able to manage and resolve early stage some access issues and what have you around these tenements. In addition, obviously, they're high quality tenements. Why
do you say that? Why do you say that, Matt? The high quality tenements. How do you know that?
Look, I think certainly. So take what we call KRL South. So that's our tenement, which centres around EL 2558. Looking at the artisanal mining that's gone on there over the years, looking at some of the aeromag data and the observations about outcrops and what have you, it's pretty rich mineral area, we would say, in terms of scar mineralization, porphyry, epithermal systems. So we think that that tenement is very strong, and some of the work we've put together indicates quite comparable structures, if you will, cross structures, if you will, in that tenement as you would see it at K92 to the south, to the north, obviously of KRL South. So we think all the ingredients are there for that tenement to be highly prospective and worth a good deal of focus, in addition to a relatively supportive or strongly supportive local community as well, which it's fundamental in this part of the world, is to have that access no matter how strong the geology is. If the social license isn't strong, it's a problem. And then the tenement to the south, to the north, KRL North, it sits right adjacent to K92's operations. We border their operation. Again, data from the government mining department indicated that asset would be highly prospective. We think that it sits in the Billamura gold mineral field, which has hosted K92 successfully and other historic miners as well. So we think that obviously was a good one to put an application in and lock a tenement over that asset as well.
Okay, I mean, if it's that good, why hasn't K92 or others picked this up? Why have you been able to pick it up so easily?
Look, I think with KRL South, in the southern tenement, there's been some legacy issues there from a social license perspective, which have been resolved and probably more are a product of past generations of clan leaders who've no longer active at a clan leadership level. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why that area was not explored as much in the past as it is. So that's an opportunity for us with KRL North in terms of that asset. I think similar issues. Quite a proud clan culture surrounding that prospect. I think there was probably some other international interest in pegging that ground, but we were successful in getting our application in ahead of other parties.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I understand they sort of if we did quite a nice piece just purely on ESG around Papua New Guinea and the way companies are working in country with locals and some of the clans, etc. So no, I do understand the importance of it. When you say the problem was that resolved by identifying the fact that the old clan leaders have gone, or was that something you had to sort out?
Look, I think mainly that one was the old clan leaders had gone. We put a lot though of work into due diligence, if you will, at a national level, regional level, and into the local communities as part of our program to peg that ground originally. So a lot of time and effort focused on making sure that the social dynamic was right.
Yeah. So give me a sense of the data that you have picked up in both north and south. Can you start putting some numbers to it rather than describing it as good or however the government may have described it? Can you share some of that with us, which encouraged you to say, I'm going to peg these? Yeah,
look, I think with KRL South, and we're just releasing information now on that in relation to we just completed a Ridge and Spur program, which we started late last year and completed in the first quarter of this year. And we've got one sample there of 40 gram per tonne or 40.33 ppm. Sample from one of the identified prospects there. There are a number of encouraging sample grade results coming.
Like what? Give me some number. Are these high grade, low grade, bulk? What are we looking at here? What do you think? What's your sense of what you've got in front of you?
Yeah, I think it's certainly high grade, and all of the data is encouraging in that regard. As I say, we've got a 40 gram per tonne sample coming through. There's, I think treading around our Ridge and Spur program, I've identified 3 prospects. One's we call East Aranofi. The second is Yarrow Ridge, and a third is Kerapa prospect. So, one of the things we really wanted to do late last year, we identified ring features in central to the tenement. So we think KRL South there's probably a lot of different areas you could focus on. We've honed in around Tirokava, which is the centre of the tenement, and the Tirokava Tebio ring, and primarily that we think is where we'll find epithermal mineralization closer to surface and maybe some of the other prospects, and we'll get a better run for our money, if you will, focusing on that ground initially. So, on the back of that, we conducted, this Ridge and Spur soil program, and we've identified, as I say, 3 prospects, and we're in the process of doing trenching on those prospects now, and I would expect that, or the intention there is to delineate some drilling targets moving forward. We'll continue to. We've got a number of samples being processed. In addition to those we've already published, a number of samples being processed, which will come through in the coming month or two, and that will generate some further news flow from this particular target or this particular tenement as we continue to work on that. But one of the early stage objectives of the company was to define some prospects, some clear prospects for these tenements, really very early stage, and so we're pleased that we've been successful in doing that.
So what have you set yourself as targets? Okay, we're going to identify some prospects. Tick. Well done. What else is it going to take to build and grow this company for you? If we look at the rest of this year, what are the high-level helicopter view things that you think the company needs to do?
Yeah, look, I think from a high-level helicopter point of view, really, I mean, I think there's two things we need to achieve, and ultimately, I think all companies in this space are measured by having a defined resource. So, our intention is to move towards a defined resource with these projects. So it clearly, it involves a lot of hard work, and we're just at the trenching stage, and we've got to do geophysics and identify targets and drill and all of the aspects that go along with the journey of doing that. But I suppose the message is that we do have a clear objective to extract value from these tenements, and that is, one is defining a resource. That's an objective of the companies in due course, and obviously not taken lightly. And we've got to make discoveries and all of the usual things, but defining a resource is number one. And I think, look, number two, I think there's a lot of opportunity for a creative regional collaboration in Papua New Guinea and more broadly. So, I mean, that's certainly, one of my, I guess, my background has been a lot of corporate development activity in this part of the world, and that's a focus for me. So, obviously, we're mindful not to be dilutive and go after transactions that undermine the value and the platform we've created. But we have created a platform, one, with a quality asset we wanted to find a resource, but secondly with a corporate vehicle, if you will, that gives us a platform to expand and look for things that are accretive in the mining precious metal space. Okay, so that'll be a big focus for the next 6 months as well.
So that's a 6 month because I'm sort of intrigued. Again, you've got some prospects. You've got to make a discovery. Not everyone makes discoveries, right? It's easier said than done. Right. And then you get a resource off the back. I understand the journey there. But in terms of what you think you're going to be able to achieve in the next 9 months of this, well, the rest of this year, 8 months, I guess now, what are those precise targets that you've set the team or set yourself? Just understand what to look out for when, hopefully you come back on and tell us, do you know what, Matt, I said I was going to do this and I did it. That's the kind of conversation I like.
Yeah, look, I think three things. So KRL South, we will report against this trenching program. We will delineate some drill program targets, and we will define and push forward with a drill program. That's my target and plan. KRL North, we're just doing sampling there. So a critical issue there was to actually resolve access rights, long-term access rights with the local clans. We've done that. So we've had the guys in that area in the last 3 months or so. So sampling results to come through there. We would then expect to come to market and update shareholders on that. Most likely then define a ridge and spur sampling program again there, or it might be a gridded program there, and then move towards some trenching program in the back half of the year for KRL North. So some pretty clear fundamental steps at the two projects in terms of what we want to do from an exploration perspective. And thirdly, I'd like to think that we can enter into a transaction which is accretive, which unlocks another valuable asset somewhere else in Papua New Guinea or somewhere else in the region as well, which I think shareholders would see is opening up another pathway for the company. Because as you say, exploration is great and we're excited about our assets, but let's diversify a little bit where we can.
Well, I think that's interesting, because you're talking about in the region being outside of Papua New Guinea, because you don't want to be a single jurisdiction or a single asset necessarily. I think it can work, like at K92, but it can also go against you at times, especially if certain countries are affected by COVID, etc. But it just shows intent to me, especially the last thing you said, with regards to an acquisition could be accretive to the company. So in terms of the profile of the company you're trying to build up, it shows intent to me. So that would be dilutive because you are going to have to go and raise some capital for that. Have you had any discussions? Are you in discussions? Are you going to say we're in discussions all the time? We're going to get that line.
Well, that's the stock answer, isn't it? Shall I give that as well?
Yeah, let's go for it. Go on.
We're talking to various parties about different opportunities in region, probably more in Papua New Guinea, to be honest, at the moment, because I think that's where our home is. That's where our infrastructure is, if you will. I think doing deals more broadly in Asia Pacific or anywhere at the moment with a COVID environment, you need to be talking to people who've got pre-existing strong management in place as well, which obviously though sometimes then carries overhead costs for a little company like ours. So I think ours would probably be more looking at assets or projects in region, in proximity to Papua New Guinea, where we think that we can add value in terms of taking charge and control of the management of those assets. But also we think that perhaps they've assets that the market might not be aware of, that have got some fairly high quality historic data supporting them as well, which, as I say, we think for a tightly held share register as ours, a transaction, potentially issuing some more paper or what have you, is unlikely to be too dilutive. And clearly, as you say, issuing more paper is dilutive, but if what you're bringing in is perceived as value add, then it lets you expand the pie.
Yeah,
which I guess is one of the key to success in mining. Can
do, but it can also be, in this environment, expensive, because a lot of gold companies are perhaps, I would argue, overvalued at the moment. So it costs a lot more than it possibly should do when it's, times are a little bit more conservative. So the fact that you're going to go regional, you're saying perhaps introduce assets which are a little bit less known. Does less known mean that they're private? Does it mean they're public? Does it mean they're less known because they're cash constrained? I mean, what's the profile of a target that you'd be looking at?
Yeah, look, pricing is pretty important. I think everyone's got a view that their assets worth more than it is. We all do, and clearly fundamental to building a company is making sure that if you're transacting, what you acquire is perceived as valuable. And certainly for us, having put all this work together to build this company, I would be at pains to make sure that what we do is going to be a value proposition going forward. So we'll be put a lot of discipline around that. I think the private space is probably an opportunity for companies such as ours. There are good assets out there in private hands for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's some legacy family issues in this part of the world that an asset's been held for whatever reason, and maybe the next leadership of the family comes through and they're looking for a different way of releasing value than maybe people would have looked at 20 years ago or so. So that probably creates some opportunities for us there. Okay.
And are you building this thing up just to flip it to K92?
Look, this is really a journey for us. It's a story to actually come with this concept, build as I say, we've taken a concept, we've built a company around it, or we're building a company around it. We've demerged that and listed it. So really, the journey is to obviously create shareholder value and all those great things. But it is really to build a platform for us to take over, to take forward over the longer term. We want to build a company here. We want to build a successful junior mining house in Asia Pacific, and it takes time, but that's what we're committed to do. That's what we want to do. We put a good amount of money into that, and we'll continue to do that. If people have want to look at the company as is their will, then that's another story. But our plan is very focused on building this, building up the company and taking it to the next level, step by step.
Step by step. Good man. I've seen some of the names involved with this. There's some pretty nice individuals and groups associated with it. Are you going to be tapping them up soon for cash to be able to deliver this year's program? Or have you got enough?
Yeah, cash resources are good. So we raised 4.1 million Canadian at the end of last year. There were a bit of transaction costs in terms of settling the listing, as you'd expect. So those went out. But otherwise, we've been carefully managing the cash burn. And at the moment, I don't have any expectation that we'll need to come back to market for additional cash, other than if it's for something which is accretive, or if we think that the exploration program is proven itself to be excellent with lots of prospects that justify looking to raise some more money, we will. To say there is a warrant structure tied to the original way we set the deal up, which gives us an ability, I guess, if you will, to factor in the number of shares would be required and what price for effectively a form of capital raising in its own right. So it is a sort of a focus for us, to be honest, if we're successful and markets favour us in terms of where commodity prices go and general appetite for shares and in equities in the gold space. Hopefully we see some uplift there, which feeds through to our warrants, and it gives us an ability to raise some additional cash there without having to go back to shareholders for an additional raising at this time. And look, our company's fully funded for what we want to do at this stage of the game in any case.
Stage of the game being between now and the end of the year, apart from the acquisition, an acquisition should you do one, or for the next few months? What do you mean by fully funded for this stage?
It's certainly funded through the next year. Certainly funded through to the next year. All going concern has been signed off by auditors and the like. So no issues there. We're adequately funded. We're pleased with the funding. To be honest, it's one of the issues, I guess, with COVID that if I could say that there's a challenge that our company faces, and I guess all miners face at the moment, is COVID. It slows up our ability to move people in and out of country. It delays and makes it a little more fluky the processing of samples from time to time and getting results back in and out from the lab. And there are provincial restrictions in terms of movement of heavy equipment around. We're not moving any heavy equipment around at the moment anyway, but there's some issues there. So I think COVID is a factor to an extent. It requires more discipline and focus from a management team to get some outcomes coming through from the field. At the same token, it probably actually just slows down the cash burn that you might otherwise see.
Okay, so who are the people actually managing this for you in country? I mean, have you been to site yet?
I've been to site a number of times. So at the moment, given COVID restrictions, we're limited in my ability to get to Papua New Guinea. But in normal times, I'd probably go to Papua New Guinea, every second week of the month. It's a fairly easy journey from Singapore to Papua New Guinea. There's 3 or 4 flights a week. So I'd go in and out. I've been up to projects a number of times. Our principal geologist, Graham Fleming, I've worked with for a number of years, initially at Tokatindang in Indonesia, and then on other projects since. So he's based in Kainantu at the moment. We've just hired another geologist, senior geologist, to come and back to back with Graham. So we have presence in the field to supervise what we're doing. We have a strong team in country. We also got through the association with APF Group, a shared service arrangement there in terms of back office. So the overall management structure is pretty lean and simple, but we do have people in critical personnel, and if you will, supervising what we do and the forward plans.
Okay. So we will hear from them in terms of what you're doing on the ground, in the ground, as it were. He's the person managing communications with locals, with clans, with mayors, with people, because we had a CEO come on here. He's got some issues with some First Nations in Canada, and he said, asked him how he's going to resolve them, and said, well, we just need to educate them. So I thought it was a sort of extraordinary phrase, and good luck with that attitude, because it's more than that. They have the ability to stop you doing what you want to do. So who's the guy on the ground and is that a full-time role? I know it's a small company, but how do you manage that?
I guess I'd say in terms of social license and communities on the way through that the communities educate us, not the other way around. And that's my experience in Didipio in the Philippines. That's my experience in North Sulawesi, in Kalimantan, on the Balayan River there. You know, communities educate us. We must be mindful of them. We must engage with them and involve them in what we're doing. And, you know, usually they're after the things which all of us are after: respect and jobs for their people. And if we can help with their health and safety, then we do. Our community, our external affairs in Papua New Guinea is managed by a guy called James Topo. James Topo is 25-year plus expert from the Mineral Resources Authority in Papua New Guinea. He was responsible for overall government policy for social license, social ESG arrangements in country. So he's a very effective operator, and he leads our team in country there. Our NED director, Jeff Lawrence, is the CEO of APEV Group as well, and very successful in country and at a more national level, has a very strong network, is perceived as a very credible operator by, you know, key institutions in Papua New Guinea as well. So, you know, our company will be as successful as it is with exploration as it is in managing that social compact. And, you know, we'll put a lot of effort and time into having the right people in field and also at a national level supervising that. Beautiful,
beautiful. Look, Matt, lovely first introduction to this new story. Best of luck. Do come back on when you start getting some of these, on-ground, in-ground numbers, and get a sense of what it is that you've got. I know what you're building now, because you've explained it quite beautifully today. I'd love to catch up with you whenever you're ready to come back on.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for your time.